Welcome to Elevate. My name is Angie Chang, founder of Girl Geek X, and with us today we have our keynote speaker, Heidi Williams, who will be speaking to us about mentorship and career goals and how you can get them faster. Welcome, Heidi. So, can you tell me a bit more about West and the programs and the offerings that they stand for 2025?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, we offer two things, although one of them is sort of a superset of the other, which is that the primary part of West and how it started was just being paired for 6 months with a mentor one-on-one. And it's someone, yeah, as I said, that will match to what you are looking to learn and what they feel particularly equipped to talk about from their experiences. And so usually folks meet, once or twice a month for the period of 6 months. And that's just the core mentorship program. We also have the Career Accelerator, which pairs the one-on-one mentorship also with the mentees joining as a cohort for a monthly career conversation. And they are topics that are very commonly found with women in tech that seem to be common, trends and themes. And so things, as I mentioned, either how to actually navigate your career and do some career planning, maybe do some introspection on what motivates you and what your values are, and maybe is that or is that not aligned with what you're doing now, or maybe is there an opportunity to reflect and find that something else might be more rewarding. So things like career planning, negotiation, personal brand, finding a sponsor, those kinds of things are things that we'll have in our monthly cohort call with the Career Accelerator. So that's the official program that we run. We also run a series of, we started a podcast, which has been a fun experience. And then we also have leadership talks where other folks from the community, some of our mentors from the community will come and host a fairly small conversation, but on a specific topic. And actually, Remy, who was just on, she did a leadership talk, and we are turning it into a podcast episode as well. So amazing folks from the community who have, some advice to share or a workshop to run that can be helpful for the West community.
Great. I think those are all my questions, but are there other questions in the audience? This is kind of a fireside chat, moderating here. If there's anyone that wants to raise their hand, we can bring them on screen. I know we all had different ideas of the word mentorship. It's definitely something that people talk about a lot, and it feels like a lot to handle on top of what we're doing, day to day with all the stuff we're already doing. So how do people really carve out time, or do you wait for them to reach that point where they're what makes someone realize they're a good candidate for something like a West mentorship program?
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about that a little bit too. I mean, our focus is mostly on folks who are a little bit closer to mid-career. I think sometimes in your first couple of years in the industry, you're just trying everything and sort of seeing what sticks, and you may not have a clear sense of a particular thing that you want to learn next. You're just a sponge and absorbing everything. And so typically the folks we work with have at least 3 years of industry experience so far. But then, yeah, it's a wide range of folks who are either trying to grow within their career ladder or maybe make a pivot of some kind to another role or another company or something like that. And so I think it's a great place to start with your manager and actually talk about, if your manager doesn't do regular career conversations with you, ask for some of their time and maybe get some feedback around where they see your strengths are and where you could move forward in your career. And then the value of having a mentor from outside of your company is that they have a totally objective perspective. They don't know any of the internal politics and anything like that. They can just give you an objective perspective that can let you operate a little bit more, sometimes transparently, than you can with an internal mentor. But sometimes an internal mentor is great too, because there's a specific person that you look up to and you aspire to do things more the way they do, and maybe reaching out to them individually and saying, hey, could I have a minute of your time just to hear about your role and how you operate and how did you learn those things? And if that feels like a fit, you can continue that conversation as well. So I recommend always starting with your manager, get a little reflection from them, a little time carved out to think about what you want to work on or where you might want to go with your career, or even just what you want to explore. And then you can kind of go from there and sort of see if they would suggest an internal mentor or maybe an external program like West could be a good fit too.
Do you find that your mentees in the West program are coming from the big tech Fortune 500 companies? Are they VC-backed startup people? Are they, what was the other one? Freelance entrepreneur? Uh,
Mm. We do end up having a variety, but I actually find that our sort of most common audience is women who are coming from slightly smaller companies. And I think that's because oftentimes at a smaller company, you don't have a wide variety of role models and mentors available to you because it's just a small audience. And so again, that concept of who we were targeting was the sort of smaller companies that can't run internal mentorship programs as successfully. I think early on when we first started West, we actually were working with Facebook and a couple of other companies, and Facebook decided to just do their own internal program at the time. So I get that too. Company, they have a ton of people they could match, and that makes sense. So I think a sweet spot for us is folks who are at smaller companies, and and then a variety of folks who are freelancer, maybe folks who sorry, I got muted for a second by mistake, but yeah, so sometimes it's folks who are either just leaving a role or freelancing and want to get back to full time. And we do end up having a variety, but a lot of it is folks from smaller companies. So I see a question that says, can you talk about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor? Yes, great question, actually. And one of our recent cohort calls that we led, the career development conversation, was about sponsorship. There's a really great YouTube talk about sponsorship and what is it and why you need one. And so typically one of the differences is that a sponsor is someone internal to your organization who is sort of has a seat at the table and can speak up for you when you're not in the room. So usually they're also in some sort of position of authority or power where they can help bring you along to things like maybe promotion conversations or opportunities for new projects. And so a sponsor can be really important if you are looking for internal mobility or internal opportunities. That's something that an external mentor can't really help. They can give you advice, but they can't help you actually open doors, whereas a sponsor can open doors. And so the sort of criteria for a sponsor is that it's someone who has a seat at the table and is willing to speak up for you, meaning that they know you a little bit, they like you, they would advocate for you. And so there's, several ideas about how do you find that sponsor? How do you maybe do a project with them or get them to know your work or reach out to them and see if they're willing to spend some of their sort of personal and political capital on helping bring you along and bring you up in the organization. So I think that can be really beneficial as well. There's a great YouTube talk that will give you some tips on how to find a sponsor and how to engage with them and sort of get them on your side. So that could be great. I see another question. Let's see, I mentioned focus on mentorship for mid-level professionals, which is much needed. I'm talking about mentees' experiences. How has the mentorship made an impact on your mentors in the West network? Yeah, I love that question. Actually, years ago, we had a great webinar talk, I don't even know what to call it, about the value of mentorship to the mentors. And I just loved it because I feel like there is a lot. I feel as when I mentor folks, I love having an opportunity to reflect on my own experiences and best practices and sort of remind myself of things maybe that I have forgotten to do because I'm busy or have not been top of mind. And so I actually really love I love the problem solving part of it. I find that really rewarding. And then also just being able to reflect on my own experiences and best practices and bring those back top of mind. And I feel like I always learn from something. I mean, especially if you're paired with someone at a different organization or in a different role that you're in, it can be great to sort of say like, oh, well, how do you operate? Like, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before. And so I feel like I always am curious about the world that they live in and how it's different from my organization. And maybe they have some best practices and things that I can apply as well. So I really do feel like the mentors, we have a lot of repeat mentors in the community, and they just love it. They find it so rewarding to help folks, but also feel like they learn a lot along the way as well. That's been great. And then how has mentoring others, shaped your own leadership style or perspective? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been in people management for a long time, and I do think mentorship and coaching, which also is, I guess, a little different from mentorship as well, is a key part of that. And I think exactly that same sort of sentiment that I learn from others, and it helps me stay curious and ask questions and understand the different ways that people are motivated. I mean, I sort of always say, you know, if I hadn't gotten into software engineering, maybe I would have been a psychologist, or, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's so many interesting overlaps, and I'm super curious about people and how they operate. And so the more folks that I get to know and understand, it helps me think about how do I lead my team and be really thoughtful about, you know, if a big change is happening, how can I put myself in others' shoes and have that variety of folks I've talked to come to mind when I think about like, oh yes, how is that going to impact that person, and how would I feel, and things like that. So I actually do feel like it's made me a more empathetic leader and be more thoughtful about maybe how to lead through change or lead through difficult times. So I really do appreciate that. And then of course I've gotten my own mentorship, as I said, as a CTO, to sort of say like, you know, how do you show up in this situation, or what do I do here? So I feel like it's been valuable for my own development as well.
Great. Is there anyone else who has a question for Heidi on mentorship? We usually get a lot of mentorship questions, but also, I guess the question I have is like, we hear about mentorship as this thing where we're supposed to ask someone to be our mentor. Is that really how it works in real life? How do you have you solved for that problem when you feel like there's so much to do and then like this is one more thing to do?
Yeah. It always reminds me of that book. I forget what it is, where the llama walks around saying, "Are you my mama?" That one. I know it sounds really weird, but yeah, I think you certainly can actually just go and ask someone to be your mentor if you know them well already. I sort of recommend, if you are cold calling someone, even if they're in your organization and you don't know them very well, I find it's a great place to start, to just say, "Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain on something? I'm really interested in, you know, the role you're in, or your industry experience over here, or some particular, you know, skill that they have that you admire," and just ask if you can chat with them for a little bit. And then if you feel a good connection with them, you know, then you can ask like, you know, "Hey, would you be up for, you know, do you have time for a half an hour every month or something like that to chat?" And very often, you know, and also, you know, let them know, of course, that if they're super busy, it's okay to say no, because it can be awkward to be asked and not actually feel like you have time for it. But generally, I think people are open to it. If they feel that connection in the first conversation, it can definitely lead to something, you know, sort of structured and ongoing. I do recommend, when you ask for people's time, be thoughtful about, you know, how much time they have, how flexible you can be with their schedule. Maybe time box it and say, "I would love to just meet with you for a few months because I have a specific thing in mind." That can be really helpful, so that people don't feel like, "Oh my gosh, I've just signed up for 10 years of mentorship, and how do I at some point cut it off," and whatnot. So anyway, I think it's totally okay to just kick off the conversation and then see where it goes, and ask for more time from them as you get to know each other. I see another question. So leaving tech came up in a recent conversation I had with other SEs with 8 to 12 years of experience. Have you found that mid-career mentorship helps women remain in the field? Yeah, I actually really do. I feel like we've had great success with this, where, you know, I think it's a little bit of a catch-22. I mean, on the one hand, I think women who are like, "I need mentorship because I want to stay in this industry," are maybe likely going to stay in the industry anyway. But I also feel like we still have a ton of women who are like, "I want to stay, I just feel stuck, and I'm worried I'm going to get bored or burn out, or, you know, not continue to have this be an enjoyable thing." So I think we do have a mix of folks who are likely to stay anyway, and other folks who are just needing help to figure out how to make it still be fun and enjoyable and whatnot. And so I would say the couple of points where I think women get stuck very often in our program and come to us is maybe making that transition to be an engineering manager or a people manager of some kind, when they're ready to make a pivot into a different thing, like getting into product management or program management or something like that. And then I think there's also another sort of ceiling that you hit, or stuck point, where going from maybe a manager to a director, or maybe making a choice to go work at a startup and take on like a head of engineering role or head of product role, or something like that. So I feel like there's moments where I don't know if I forget who did the research. I know Kapor Center was involved in it, but around the broken ladders and the broken rungs on the ladders, those points where people get stuck are the ones where we're just trying to help help them move more quickly and sort of advance into those more senior roles. So I think it does help. I'm very bullish on it, and want to continue working with women to do that. So yeah. Awesome. Trying to see if there was another question. Oh yeah, Amanda, thank you for finding all the the links to the YouTube channels that I've been mentioning. Yeah.
So I had a question. You mentioned before you have a group of CTOs that you chat with. How did you happen to have this group? How did you make your circle? Just curious about the actual like tactics you used.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think I'm trying to think of how I first got introduced, and maybe this was not, I wouldn't say that I officially had asked someone to be my sponsor. I don't think at the moment I had the words in my head. But actually, when I was back at Box, I was leading a large part of the engineering org, reporting to the head of engineering. And all four founders from Box were still there at the time. And because they had been founders, one of them, who had been the CTO at one point, had been invited to this Bay Area CTO's dinner. And I would talk with him about stuff. And at some point he said, I think you'd really enjoy meeting these people. Why don't you come to a meeting? And so I got invited to a dinner, and it was really cool. And then we hosted one a month later at Box. And so I sort of got into the community. So I guess at that point, I mean, he could have been a sponsor for me because he was in the room, had the opportunity to invite people in. And even though I wasn't a CTO or even a head of engineering at that point, he felt like I had some interesting insights and that I also might be able to learn from this other group of people. And so I was very honored to be added to it. And then later, when I had my own startup, I was sort of in this group that grew over time. And when I co-founded Tequitable with my amazing co-founder, Lisa Galopter, both of us got invited to the Bay Area CTOs group, which was a slightly larger group that ends up meeting monthly. And so they usually have a policy of only one person from a company, but because both of us have computer science degrees and whatnot, they ended up letting both of us be there. So it's an amazing group of people, and they have regular conversations about different topics as CTOs and heads of engineering, and very often startup-y sized organizations. And so I was very lucky to be connected through different folks that I've met in the industry who have gotten to that level and then invited me into the room. So I've really appreciated that community.
Thank you for the clarity. Sorry, I like to get into the weeds. Like, how did that actually happen? Like, did you sign up for something, or, and then aside from the CTO group, I don't know if there's other questions, but like, are there other peer groups or support groups, ways that things that keep you going, when things are hard that you can share with us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it's interesting now that so as at Murmuration, we're a nonprofit, and so there's a CTOs for Good group that there's a little overlap, and so I'm hoping to join that group as well. And it's been interesting making a foray into the nonprofit world and just seeing it is a different beast, and it's been fascinating. But I think also actually someone mentioned that everyone they meet from Box seem to have loved their experience. One of my network that I keep in touch with, the Box Women in Tech community, was amazing. And we have an ongoing Slack channel, and we try to get together. It's probably every 6 months or so, but I just love that community, and really amazing women who have all gone on to do amazing things. There's a few that are still at Box, and then a lot that have moved on to other places. And so I do think I connect back with my women in tech community very often, whether it's from Box or, women that I met at Grammarly and from Adobe and things like that. So that's definitely my community. And I love being able to reconnect with folks and get inspired by where they've gone in their careers and what they're doing. So it's just always really fun for me. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've done a lot of work to stay connected on not just in-person events and groups, but also online communities on Slack. I'm going to guess Discord is one of them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you've also launched West a few years ago to help address the attrition of women, mid to senior level women in engineering. Is this specific to engineering, or other people other than the engineering can join?
It's actually all women in technical roles, and we self-define. So if you feel like as a technical program manager, that is a technical role, and that's where you spend your time, you are totally welcome to join. If you're in product marketing and you feel like that's a technical role, you're welcome to join. And so we don't feel one of our philosophies is that it's not critical for you to be matched with a mentor who's exactly in your role definition. We find there's a lot to be learned from someone who's maybe not exactly in the same role as you. And so having the variety, I think we've had a lot of designers, product managers, program managers, engineers go through the program and be matched with a variety of folks who may not look exactly like them. Our mentors are actually both men and women, and there have been some amazing matches, and some of those relationships. It's great to see folks still be connected and touch base with their mentee, 5, 6, 7 years later. It's been really, really cool. So yeah, it's definitely anybody in a technical role is who we feel like we can serve best.
I think that we haven't actually talked about the fact that Girl Geek X is officially partnering with West Mentorship to bring our women to the service. I think the discount code is Girl Geek X. If you're actually thinking about this offering, I encourage you to check out the website and plug in Girl Geek X for the discount code to show up, because it does for 10% off. But that is a way for us to try to retain women in tech. As we know, there's a lot happening that can lead to burnout, to feeling a little lost. A lot of the women that come to Girl Geek X have talked about looking for returnships or looking to pivot, looking to come in from another industry. And these are all things that I feel like I've seen here living in the San Francisco Bay Area with my own eyes. But I also want to reaffirm that these things do happen. People do pivot their jobs. In fact, our next speaker is going to be talking about that, pivoting what they're working on. But yeah, I think there's a lot to this, and hopefully people can utilize West next year if they're interested, thinking about tackling something hard that is something with a goal that takes about 6 months that they can measure a success with. I think I've also seen on the website there's some language that has been suggested by West on like how to convince your management to help you pay for this, because there's probably budget somewhere for it. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, definitely. And we're super excited to partner with Girl Geek X. I think you have such an amazing community here, and definitely love seeing the various communities for women in tech work together to continue to move folks forward and help us support however we can. So joinwest.org if you want to find more about how the program works. So we'll be sorry, you asked me a very specific question, but there was one other thing I wanted to mention, which was that we'll be launching the next career accelerator in January. And so sort of late January, early February. So if you sign up now, we can get you into the next career accelerator program. And you asked one other question. I'm sorry, I forgot, it went out of my head, the last part.
Can someone remind us if there's what the question? It also came out of my head.
I'm so sorry. I feel like, oh man, it just went out of my head. I'm so sorry.
How to explain the benefits to an employer.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Amanda. Yes. So we do have, so a lot of folks, you get a learning and development budget at your organization. And so we have like a template of how you can tell your manager, these are my goals. This is what I'm looking to learn. I would like to request this learning and development budget to pay for this program. I will say, if you haven't used your L&D budget by the end of this year, you could even split the cost of West, half this year and half next year if your learning and development budget is smaller. So sometimes you can negotiate that with your manager. I think a lot of us don't use our L&D budget because we just forget about it or we don't feel like we have time. But I think West is a program that makes it pretty easy it's not an enormous time commitment. It's probably a total of like 2 hours a month for 6 months. And so just encourage you to make that pitch to your managers about that. So yeah. And then I do see a question about whether we work internationally. We do actually. When I was there were a bunch of women from Grammarly who were calling in from Ukraine and from Berlin. And so we've had folks in India, Australia. We have someone in the program right now from Korea. And so it's been really interesting. I love that you can meet virtually. And so your mentor could be anywhere. And that's awesome. So definitely supporting Europe or other locations. And so I think, I guess I will say also my definition of mid-career was very different before we started West. And I think now folks self-identify mid-career being like 3 years and up. And so, so definitely, you know, I would say feel free to reach out to us about the program, even if you feel like you're a little more early in career. I think there are other mentorship programs out there, and there might also be something within your organization for folks who are a little bit more junior and sort of needing a different kind of like guidance or mentorship. But reach out to us and we're happy to chat with you about whether West would be a good program for you now. So yeah. Any other questions? I mean, like I said, I'm super excited to partner with Girl Geek X, and I feel like we have both halves of the puzzle, both thinking about retention and also sort of you know, finding your next job. I think a lot of folks do come to West and say, okay, how do I, okay, now what? How do I go find my next job? And so, you know, going to Girl Geek X dinners or coming to the conference and are all great ways. And so I'm excited that we can work more closely to support women, whether they're trying to stay and grow or pivot somewhere else and grow in a new direction. So very excited about that.
So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to ask another one. How would you suggest mentorship for people that maybe don't have a job, therefore no L&D budget? Like, what's a low lift way for people to like bring mentorship into their lives?
Yeah. And actually, well, so two things. One, I forgot to mention that we do have a scholarship program as well. And so if you are not working right now, or if you feel like your company doesn't have an L&D budget and you would be paying out of pocket, you can fill out our scholarship form, and we can take a look at being able to support you in the next cohort. And then I think otherwise, as I mentioned, you can find great mentors in your network, other people that you know on LinkedIn inside of your organization. And so it is always worth it to just reach out to someone that you admire, maybe is in a role that you want to know more about, or maybe has an approach or a style that you really appreciate. And so, you know, reach out and just see if you can start with that coffee chat. I think it's a good way to go. And I think eventually you'll find someone that you feel like is a good fit for you. And maybe it's just one conversation and it's just a little micro mentorship that sort of gives you one idea that you can go work towards, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a long program. So, just expanding your network, getting to know other people, don't be afraid of the cold outreach. You'd be surprised how much people are willing to actually spend their time with you and sort of help bring you along on the journey. So don't be afraid to ask.
What about for a lot of people who are here? This is our virtual conference, it's the people all around the world. They can't get a coffee with somebody. What do you think? I'm asking you.
Yeah. I mean, I think even just setting up like a Zoom call with someone and just sort of, just asking if you can spend, 20 minutes or half an hour. I think also, I don't know how feasible it is, but you could always send someone like a virtual, gift card or something to buy a coffee and bring to the conversation if you wanted to. So there's definitely creative ways that you could, DoorDash something to their house for them or something.
That's really good. Because I was like, okay, so could recommend to people to get a Calendly account, and that allows people to schedule easily into your Google Calendar, and then you'll have a free Google meeting where you can then chat. But then you also want to be hopefully specific in terms of your ask, or at least make that email or LinkedIn message intro to then say, I'm trying to do this thing. Here's my resume. Can I get 15-30 minutes of your time? Here's my Calendly. And by the way, I'm extra thoughtful. This is not something I sent to 1,000 people. I also want to send you this DoorDash coffee from my favorite woman-owned barista or something.
Love it.
I'm mapping this out. Okay.
I love it.
I'm just trying to think through, because we do have people who tell us like, I'm not on the Bay Area. How can I do this?
Yeah.
Cool. That was my question. But is there any other more questions? Oh,
I love the tip here. Have a specific ask when contacting someone. Don't just ask to pick your brain. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I'm super fascinated by your career journey. How did you pivot from engineering to product management? Or what has your experience as a startup founder been? I'm considering that for myself. Or, even for someone earlier in career, I feel like one of those questions is, should I go to a small company and wear a ton of hats and learn really fast, but maybe not have super senior people I'm learning from? Or should I go to a bigger company where I can like really have amazing hands-on role models that are partnering with me and whatnot? So just even early in career, asking someone like, how'd you make a decision to go to a small company or a big company? Or you've tried them all, what do you like best and why? There's so many interesting questions you can ask out there as you're trying to even figure out how to navigate your career and what experiences you want to have to then figure out what to cross off the list and what to maybe pursue more of.
Yeah, that's really great advice on being relevant and interesting in your note to this person that doesn't know you, and so they're like, okay, that this person has obviously read my LinkedIn, made some connections, and I would click on this Calendly and we'll get this quick meeting going, and then after we have our meeting where we're like, yeah, this person's cool, and then if we both find that there's a time in our lives that we have some time to add another person into it for a few maybe months and stating that time boxed thing, so hopefully that people can get their mentorship relationships going. Micro mentorship feels much less overwhelming than when you say mentorship and you can get to this like high place. So thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Not just people with L&D budgets, but everyone can get some mentorship in their lives as we face our new year and think about things we want to do. I think a previous speaker, Rami, had talked about building your personal team, and I think that's a really great way to think about that. I really am going to hold that one because people always talk about your personal board of directors, but I think this personal team to me feels more relevant. I'm like building your team, helping you get to where you want to go, and hopefully one day everyone will be up at Elevate speaking about their expertise and their career pivot and all the cool things they've done in their lives, because we don't know about it till you tell us about it. So it's about time. I want to say thank you so much, Heidi, for coming. We're going to send an email out with a link to West so people can look into mentorship in the new year. And I think it's about time to bring our next speaker on. So thank you, Heidi.